has a habit of making everything feel a little excessive. Bigger castles, longer histories, more kings, queens, and royal drama than you can realistically keep track of over a single trip. Over the next 3 days, I'll take you through royal chateaux, medieval fortresses, historic towns, and some of the most famous landscapes in France. So, if you're planning a visit, here's exactly how I'd spend 3 days in the Loire Valley. And if you'd like more travel guides like this one, make sure to subscribe. Day 1. The Loire Valley's most iconic castles. Morning. Château de Chambord. If you're trying to figure out which castle to see first in the Loire Valley, put Chambord at the very top of your list. Starting here gives you the perfect baseline for just how ridiculous French royal wealth was before you check out the smaller, more furnished chateau nearby. I pulled up right at 9 a.m. and you need to match that timing. If you get here later, the narrow, winding stone staircases turn into absolute bottlenecks. When you walk up the main gravel path, the building looks less like a home and more like a massive white limestone fortress topped with a messy, chaotic skyline of carved stone chimneys. The second you step through the main entrance, the first thing that hits you is the intense smell of campfires. The staff keeps the massive ground floor fireplaces roaring just to burn off the dampness inside the walls. I bypassed the lower rooms and went straight to the center of the building to find the double helix staircase. Leonardo da Vinci supposedly drew up the plans for this giant limestone cage, and the engineering is wild. It's 2 separate spiral stairs wrapped around each other, so 2 people can climb up at the same time without ever running into each other. Walking up is a total trip because you can look through the stone slits and hear the clear voices of people on the opposite side, but you can only catch glimpses of them through the gaps. An entry ticket is $18, and if I did this morning over, I would completely skip trying to explore the upper rooms. The old French kings only used this place for quick hunting trips, so they never actually furnished the upper levels. Walking through those higher floors feels like wandering around an empty, cold concrete warehouse. There's absolutely nothing to look at. Save your energy and take those central stairs all the way to the top terrace instead. Up on the roof, you're standing inside a tight, windy stone maze of massive chimneys covered in old graffiti that visitors have been carving into the rock since the 1800s. Standing right at the edge of the stone deck, you can look straight past the water canals into the miles of thick, dark hunting forests. That windy roof is the only part of the interior that actually matters. Late morning. Lunch at La Cave des Rois. As I walked out of the Chambord gates, I headed straight to the main village plaza right outside to grab an early lunch at La Cave des Rois. They open up at 11:30 a.m., which is perfect timing to beat the main wave of people looking for a table. Because of the location, you're definitely paying for a bit of premium for convenience, but the indoor seating is really cozy and gets you completely out of the wind. A 2-course set menu here runs right around $25. The kitchen focuses a lot on regional game and local ingredients, so the menu has things like wild boar and duck confit. I ordered their homemade burger, which is thick, heavy, and comes with a massive pile of fries. The food is simple and filling. It's the most practical spot to just sit down, rest your legs after climbing all those limestone stairs, and refuel before you start the drive over to the next castle. Afternoon. Château de Cheverny. Driving over to Cheverny right after Chambord completely caught me off guard. You go from a freezing empty stone fortress to a place that actually feels warm and lived in. The outside's way more restrained. There's no forest of towers on the roof, just a clean, symmetrical layout. But the second I stepped inside, I found myself moving much slower than I had all morning. Instead of walking through bare concrete-like rooms, Cheverny felt incredibly cozy. It smells like old furniture polish and fresh flowers. The same family has actually owned this place for centuries, and they still live in one of the wings, which is probably why the rooms feel so intact. I walked through the spaces packed with real Persian rugs, burning candles, and dining tables completely set with porcelain. It was the first time all day I could actually picture people eating and hanging out inside a castle, rather than just staring at a museum piece. If you grew up reading the Tintin comics, you'll love the outside because the creator used Cheverny as the exact model for Marlinspike Hall. My ticket for the house and grounds was $18, but I paid $23 for the combo ticket to see the Tintin exhibit. I originally planned to just breeze through the house in an hour and head out, but I ended up staying for over 2 hours because the walk-through comic rooms were incredibly well done. Insider tip: make sure you walk past the gardens to the estate kennels before you leave. Cheverny is still used for traditional hunts, and they keep a live pack of over 100 hunting hounds right on the property. I wandered back there and watched the entire pack running around the courtyard, and the sound of them barking together echoes through the entire forest. Late morning, Royal Chateau of Blois. When I pulled up to Blois, the setting immediately changed the vibe of the trip. Unlike Chambord and Cheverny, which sit in the middle of a massive isolated countryside park, Blois is crammed right into the center of a busy town. You have to walk up a steep cobblestone hill just to reach the gates. The second I stepped into the central courtyard, it felt like looking at 4 completely different buildings, awkwardly stitched together. One wall is built from moody red brick and stone, another looks like a medieval fortress, and the next is a flat, imposing classical palace wall. It turns out 7 different kings and 10 queens lived here, and instead of tearing the place down, each generation just built a brand new wing right next to the old one. The result is a chaotic timeline of French history wrapped around a single courtyard. The absolute centerpiece is the Francois I staircase, which juts out into the center of the yard like a massive octagonal stone cage. Walking up to it's a trip because the stairs are completely open to the outside air, so you can look out through the carved balconies down into the courtyard below as you climb. A standard ticket to walk through the interior costs $16. Blois definitely wasn't the most beautiful or uniform place I saw all day, but seeing how hundreds of years of royal egos got layered into one messy courtyard made it the most interesting. Insider tip: if you're staying in the town of Blois for night, pay $24 for the combo ticket that includes the evening sound and light show. I usually avoid these things because they can feel incredibly cheesy, but they project massive 3D mapping animations directly onto the 4 inner walls of the courtyard in the dark. You sit right on the stones while the building looks like it's literally crumbling and rebuilding itself around you, which feels completely different from walking through the empty rooms during the day. Evening, dinner at Le Castelet. I walked about 5 minutes down from the hill from the chateau into the old town and grabbed a table at Le Castelet for dinner. The dining room feels small, cozy, and a bit cramped, with low ceilings and exposed wooden beams that give it a great local bistro feel. Mains here run between $23 and $30. The kitchen serves very traditional heavy French comfort food. I started with a plate of escargot drowning in hot garlic butter, then ordered the duck breast, which came perfectly rendered with a thick, sweet raspberry reduction. The food is incredibly rich, satisfying, and exactly the kind of heavy meal you want after a full day of walking up and down castle stairs. Loire Riverbanks. After dinner, I walked a few blocks down to the edge of the water to check out the riverbanks. The cool thing about the Loire is that it doesn't feel like a manicured city river. There's no massive concrete walls or big tour boats passing by. It just feels wide, shallow, and completely wild, with big sandbanks cutting right through the middle of the water. Once it gets fully dark, the old stone bridge lights up and reflects all across the water. It gets pretty chilly the closer you get to the path, but it's incredibly quiet down there compared to the busy streets up by the castle. I just sat on the low stone ledge for a bit, watched the lights on the water, and wound down before heading back to my room. Day 2. Renaissance castles and historic tours. Morning. Château de Chenonceau. The second day was packed tight, so I bolted out early to get to Chenonceau right at the 9 a.m. opening. You walk down this insanely long alley of massive trees, and then the trees just break open to show a castle completely straddling a river. It literally looks like a stone bridge with a palace glued on top of it. Walking into the grand alley is where it gets weird. you're standing on a freezing checkered tile floor in what looks like a classic royal ballroom, but when you look out the side windows, the river is churning right beneath your boots. Feels totally bizarre. A ticket cost me $19, and you'll easily need a couple hours to check out the rooms and the gardens out back. My biggest mistake here was assuming the inside would be warm. The river underneath acts like a massive AC unit, and a freezing draft blows straight up through the stone floors. I spent the whole time shivering and wishing I had thrown on a sweater. Afternoon, Château de Villandry. After an hour on the road, I finally rolled up to the next castle stop at Villandry, and this place completely flips your expectations. If you're tired of looking at old royal bedrooms and heavy furniture, this is the remedy. The actual building is totally secondary here. Everyone visits strictly for the insane outdoor terraces. The whole property is basically a massive living puzzle board of perfectly trimmed greenery. The design is so rigid that it almost feels intimidating to walk through. They even have a giant kitchen garden where the gardeners use rows of purple cabbage and red beets to create crazy color blocks in the soil. It costs $8.50 just to walk the grounds, or $14 if you want to go inside the house. I paid for the whole thing, but honestly, the inside of the house is totally skippable. The rooms feel dark and generic compared to the massive explosion of colors and crazy shapes happening outside in the sun. Insider tip. Skip the flat gravel walks near the entrance. Find the stone steps that lead up to the high forest trails on the very edge of the property line. From there, you'll look straight down onto the maze of hedges, which is the only way to actually see the geometric patterns clearly. Lunch at La Doulce Terrasse. If you need a break after walking the Villandry grounds, head right outside the gates to La Doulce Terrace. It's a casual, open-air spot right on the edge of the castle walls with a big canopy terrace and wooden picnic tables. I ordered the goat cheese and herb tartine for $15 and a slice of the vegetable quiche for $13.50. The tartine is a thick, crunchy piece of toasted bread with a heavy spread of tangy local cheese, and they serve it cold. The food is light, clean, and fills you up without leaving you completely sluggish for the drive to your next stop. Late afternoon, exploring tour. Tours has a completely different energy than those sleeping castle villages. It's bustling, packed with students, and the whole historic core is incredibly easy to walk. Since I was crashing here for a night and arrived by late afternoon, I dropped my bags and went straight out to explore. First up was Saint-Julien Abbey, right on the busy tram line. The doors were wide open, so I ducked into the freezing, stripped-down interior. The coolest part is the modern abstract stained glass. World War II bombs blew out the originals, so they replaced them with these bright, colorful panels that splash purple and blue light all over the bare medieval stone. It's a quick, free detour that's totally worth it. From there, I walk 10 minutes over to the massive Saint-Gatien Cathedral. The front of this place is a wild maze of Gothic stone carvings. Inside, it's free to enter, and I spent 15 minutes just staring up at the 13th century stained glass behind the altar. The deep blues and reds are so bright, they look like they're plugged into a wall. Next, I headed down toward the river to check out Tours Castle. It closes early at 6 p.m., so the gates were already locked by the time I rolled up. Honestly, don't sweat it if you miss the cutoff. Most of the original fortress was torn down centuries ago anyway, leaving just two big round stone towers. Snaking a look at the thick walls from the outside gives you the whole picture. I finished the loop at Saint-Martin Basilica, which is a 19th century rebuild because the original church got completely wrecked during the French Revolution. The real reason to duck inside before the 7 p.m. closing time is to find the stairs leading down to the crypt. It's a small, quiet room right under the main altar where you can see Saint-Martin's actual stone tomb, all while hearing the faint rumble of evening traffic passing by on the streets outside. Evening. Drinks at Place Plumereau. To cap off the night, I walked 2 blocks over to Place Plumereau. The plaza is lined with crooked 15th century half-timbered houses, and by late evening, the entire center of the square is completely taken up by outdoor tables packed with students. Finding a seat in the middle of the crowd was impossible, so I grabbed a tiny table on the corner of Old Temple des Rois, right at 3 Place Plumereau. It's a massive local favorite that stays open all the way till 2 a.m., and the energy out on the pavement is loud and infectious. The drinks here are cheap, with most items running between $1 and $10. I ordered a cold pint of draft beer for $5, though they also serve local Loire Valley wines like Vouvray and Chinon by the glass. I sat out on the terrace under the heat lamps, sipped my drink, and watched the square buzz until my eyes started to get heavy, wrapping up the massive second day on the road. Day 3. Medieval fortresses and riverside towns. Morning. Château d'Azay-le-Rideau. By the third morning, I was so burnt out on giant stone fortresses that I actually skipped this stop entirely. But the 25-minute drive down from Tours completely changed my mood. Driving down these winding country roads through the thick woods got me genuinely excited again. You drop right into the little village of Azay-le-Rideau, walk straight to the gate, and hand over your $13. The second you step onto the grounds, you see this beautiful castle sitting on a tiny island in the middle of the Indre River. On a still morning, the water is a dead flat sheet of glass, and the reflection so crisp it looks fake. Inside, the place is surprisingly small and cozy. You walk right into this massive stone staircase in the center, and the carvings are so deep you just want to run your hands over them. But nobody warned you about the absolute icebox on the ground floor. The river flows right under the stone floors, and that damp chill smacks you in the face. I was kicking myself for leaving behind my jacket. I spent about 45 minutes walking through the upper rooms to see the massive medieval tapestries, mostly just to keep moving before the cold got to me. I finished the morning out in the huge 8-hectare English park wrapping around the water. After days of dodging elbows in tight rooms, getting onto the grass to just walk and look back at the castle without tour groups in your face feels amazing. If I did this over, I would check the weather and completely skip the indoor ticket if it's windy or cloudy. The real magic is watching the castle float in its own water mirror from the lawns. And if the wind chops up the river, the freezing rooms inside are just not worth the $13. Late morning. Royal Fortress of Chinon. Leaving Azay-le-Rideau, I drove about 30 minutes southwest until this massive stone wall appeared on a rocky ridge right above the Vienne River. The Royal Fortress of Chinon looks like a rugged, heavy-duty military bunker. I skipped the steep uphill walk from the lower town by taking the free public lift, walked to the main gate, and paid the $11 entry fee. Most of the complex is a sprawling, roofless ruin where the wind whips through old arrow slits. I stood inside the shell of the royal quarters where Joan of Arc met the future king in 1429. Only the massive fireplace wall is left standing against the open sky, which is wild to look at. They give you a tablet called the histopad at the entrance. When you hold it up to the bare stones, the screen shows you what the medieval rooms used to look like. It actually works well because it helps you make sense of the rubble without cluttering the place with plastic signs. Insider tip. Skip the main visitor parking lot at the top. Instead, park for free down by the river at Jeanne d'Arc lot. Walk through the old town streets and take the hidden public elevator right up into the fortress walls. Lunch at Les Années 30. By the time I finished exploring the fortress, my stomach was roaring, so I headed straight into the old town to track down Les Années 30. It sits inside a 16th century building, but the interior catches you off guard with its trendy terracotta walls and retro chairs. They have a Michelin recommendation, but nobody's walking around with their nose in the air. The food is heavy, comforting French cooking with a modern twist. I started with their crispy crab samoussa with roasted prawns, followed by a thick beef fillet swimming in a rich, buttery whiskey sauce that I scraped clean off the plate with my bread. A full meal here sets you back about $69, which definitely hurts the wallet, but believe me, it was worth every single bite. Afternoon, medieval streets of Chinon. As cool as the fortress was, walking through the old town right below it was what actually hooked me on this place. The second you get down there, you're navigating these incredibly tight, narrow alleys packed with medieval half-timbered houses leaning out over the cobblestones. What makes it great is that it doesn't feel like a dead, polished museum for tourists. Real people are actually living here, gossiping at sidewalk cafes and buying groceries while these 1,000-year-old stone buildings just blend into the background. I completely stopped looking at my map and just drifted through the side streets to see where I'd end up. You'd stumble into tiny hidden squares and quiet stone courtyards that open up out of absolutely nowhere. The whole place is surrounded by vineyards, and you can constantly see the massive fortress walls looming directly over the rooftops whenever you look up. Most people just do the castle and sprint back to their cars, but they're totally missing out on the best part. Insider tip. While you're wandering, keep an eye out for the wine caves cut directly into the limestone cliffs right under the castle walls. You can literally walk off the street into a freezing, damp cave to taste local Cabernet Franc poured straight from the winemakers, and it's 1,000,000 times better than buying a bottle at a gift shop. Late afternoon, Château de Saumur. Look, I know, another castle. You're probably rolling your eyes thinking I've completely lost my mind by this point in the trip, but trust me on this one, driving into Saumur is different. The thing sits high up on a massive cliff overlooking the Loire River, and you can see its octagonal towers and bright gold weather vanes looming over the highway from miles away. I paid the $9 entry fee and walked onto the grounds. It looks exactly like a fairy tale palace from the outside, but the actual history is surprisingly dark and gritty. Instead of just hosting fancy royal parties, this place spent centuries being used as a brutal state prison and a heavy military ammo depot. The rooms inside are packed with local history and a massive collection of antique horse saddles, but the exhibits couldn't keep my attention for long. I kept drifting back to the windows. The views from this high up are incredible. You look straight down onto the sweeping river and the endless rows of white limestone houses with black slate roofs. Evening, dinner at Bonheur Saumur. To finish off the entire trip, I walked over to Bonheur Saumur on Rue des Moulins. This spot is tucked right behind a wooden bridge at the back of the castle, and the location is everything. I grabbed a seat on the wooden terrace right at the base of the cliff, staring straight up at the illuminated castle walls. The whole place has the energy of a casual backyard hangout mixed with a lively local wine bar. The menu's packed with simple bistro plates and sharing tapas, not some massive, pretentious tasting menu. I ordered a big steaming bowl of their rich mushroom risotto paired with a plate of hot, crispy fried sand smelt. The food is straightforward and unpretentious rather than being overly complex, but eating that while watching the sunset hit the castle stones makes it unbeatable. Main plates only run between $13 and $16, so you get a front row view of the monument without getting ripped off. Grab a glass of local red wine, sit outside, and just soak in the view to close out your night. Useful info for spending 3 days in the Loire Valley. Best time to visit the Loire Valley. After looking into different seasons for this trip, I'd personally lean toward May, June, or September. A lot of what makes the Loire Valley special isn't just the castles themselves, it's the gardens, vineyard landscapes, and time spent wandering through towns like Blois, Amboise, and Chinon between stops. Those months seem to hit the sweet spot where everything is still vibrant without the busiest summer crowds. July and August definitely bring the liveliest atmosphere, but they also bring tour buses, longer lines, and packed chateau grounds. Winter has its own appeal, though the trip becomes much more focused on the castles and historic towns since many gardens aren't nearly as impressive as they are during the warmer months. Airport tips. I'd probably fly into Paris for the itinerary. The Loire Valley isn't really one destination. It's a collection of towns, castles, and villages spread across a large area, so having plenty of transport options makes planning easier. Trains from Paris to Tours usually take around 1 hour, while Blois and Amboise are usually easy to reach by rail. For this particular route, though, I'd still pick a rental car. Having one means you're not constantly checking train schedules every time you want to move between castles. Some of the nicest drives in the region are short stretches between towns, rather than the journey from Paris itself. Where to stay in the Loire Valley? If I were doing this exact itinerary again, I'd split my nights between Blois and Tours just like this route does. Blois puts you close to Chambord, Cheverny, the royal Château of Blois, while Tours works well for Villandry, Azay-le-Rideau, Chinon, and Saumur. Budget hotels and guest houses usually start around $70 to $120 per night. Most comfortable central hotels fall somewhere between $120 and $250, while chateau hotels and luxury countryside estates can easily run between $300 and $700 or more. One thing I noticed while planning is that staying directly inside the chateau sounds incredible, but the locations can sometimes be more isolated than you'd expect. For me, being able to walk out for dinner in Blois or tour would probably outweigh sleeping in a castle every night. How to get around the Loire Valley. Walking works perfectly once you're inside the towns, but I wouldn't rely on it for the full trip. The castles might look close together on a map, but the distances start adding up quickly once you're moving between different parts of the valley. Rental cars generally start around $45 to $90 per day and make the entire itinerary much simpler. Trains are a good alternative if you're focusing mainly on Tours, Blois, Amboise, and Saumur, with most regional tickets costing somewhere between $5 and $20. Looking back at the route, the biggest advantage of having a car isn't speed, it's flexibility. Some of the best views of the Loire Valley happen while driving along the river or passing through villages that never make it into the itinerary. Where to eat in the Loire Valley? Good food ended up being much easier to find than I expected. Between the wine regions, local markets, riverside towns, and historic centers, there was never much need to hunt for something decent to eat. For a special occasion dinner, I'd look at Fleur de Loire in Blois. The restaurant holds Michelin stars and focuses heavily on ingredients from the surrounding Loire region, particularly freshwater fish and seasonal produce. Tasting menus generally range between $204 and $318 per person. If you want something refined without quite reaching for that level of commitment, Domaine de Huy de Loire offers a more countryside atmosphere, with tasting menus usually falling between $153 and $247. For everyday meals, I honestly think the town centers are where the Loire Valley shines most. Places like Tours, Amboise, Chinon, and Saumur are full of small wine bars, cafes, bakeries, and traditional bistros where a lunch or dinner often costs somewhere between $15 and $40. Those were the places I found myself wanting to try the most while putting this itinerary together. The Loire Valley is one of those places where the journey ended up being just as memorable as the destinations themselves. Some of my favorite moments weren't inside a chateau at all. They happened while driving through the countryside, wandering through old town centers, or stumbling across views I wasn't expecting to find. If this guide helped you plan your own trip, don't forget to like and subscribe for more travel itineraries. And if you're heading to Paris next, I've got a guide for that waiting right here.